I'm going to talk first a little bit about my organization, who we are, what the site browser is and why we developed it, and then also the phases that we had to go through to get to this point. We had to develop a Thesaurus, first of all, because we couldn't find one out there that met our needs. We developed a web content management system to track all of our website content, and then finally developed the site browser tool that we added to the site. And I'll be talking about all of the data harmony tools that we used along the way. And then talk about some conclusions from our experience and some future plans for the tool. So basically, I work for the Office of Mine Safety and Health Research. We're a research lab within the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health that does occupational safety and health research. We're not regulatory, but a lot of our research does feed into eventual regulations. NIOSH is underneath the Centers for Disease Control, which in turn is under the division, or the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And in our section, we focus strictly on mining safety and health. So this left photo shows a picture of our 180-acre facility in Pittsburgh. We have about 200 employees, most of whom are engineers and scientists. Some of the pictures on the right show some of the areas that we focus on in our research. Probably some of the highest profile areas is dust control and gas control methodologies. When you mine coal, and we focus a lot on coal mining at my facility, it releases methane gas, which is explosive. It also releases dust, coal dust, which can be explosive if you don't mitigate those hazards. Dust is also a health hazard. If you don't mitigate the dust, this is what happens, and I don't have any sound here, but it should be a big boom. That shows a fireball coming out of an experimental mine that we have at our facility. The neighbors, people who live in the neighborhood weren't too happy about us doing those tests, so we don't do them anymore. But these are some of our more recent accomplishments. Down here we have our coal dust explosibility meter, and that's something new that we developed so that we can make sure that the coal dust is not explosive. We basically spray limestone dust, which we call rock dust, on the mine walls to keep the coal dust down and make it not explosive. So that little device measures whether the ratio is good enough to prevent explosions. We have the personal dust monitor up here, which is something fairly new that measures the exposure that a worker receives to dust during the course of a work shift to make sure it stays within permissible limits. And we have some other things like the miner's knee pad. The mining environment is very different from other industries. People often have to work on their hands and knees during the day because the seam height might be so low that they actually have to crawl all day. So you have to have special knee pads and we couldn't just use ones that were off the shelf. They weren't working well in that environment. So basically, what is the site browser and why did we develop it? Well, we have all of this research, and we are a research organization, so we have a lot of publications. Our website is the primary means that we use to disseminate our research. We have about 2,200 web pages right now, majority of which, about 85% of which, are publications and pages about publications and products. On our website, the primary way to access these web pages were through a big list of all of our publications, a big list of all of our products, and then what we call safety and health topic pages. And we found that these weren't really working very well. People were having a hard time finding stuff on our site. So this is an example, or this is our mining publications list. And when you see this little squiggle in the middle, that means I chopped off the middle section of the screen just so I can squeeze it together and you can see the top and the bottom part all together. But this is a list of all 1,800 some of our publications. The only way to filter them is by using that little search box up here. I guess I should pay attention up here. This little search box over here, you can type in a keyword and it will find publications and filter publications if that keyword is found in the abstract or in the title or one of the fields that's shown on the screen. But if you don't guess the right keyword, it's not using a thesaurus, it's not going to use synonyms, so it's kind of hard for people to find things. And we have a similar page for our products, except that the products are divided into the type of product they are. Is it a training material, a video, software? We have different types of products that we develop. Now, we also have the safety and health topic pages, and the blue image here I lifted off of our homepage. It lists some of our topics like diesel exhaust, respirable dust, firefighting, refuge chambers, and so forth. And over on the right side of the screen, I have an example of one of those topic pages on refuge chambers. I don't know if you know what a refuge chamber is, but you may recall back in 2006, the Sago mine disaster in West Virginia. 13 miners were trapped in a methane explosion. They actually survived for the initial explosion, but it took 2 days for rescuers to get to them, and by then 12 of the 13 had died of carbon monoxide poisoning. So afterward, Congress mandated that we do a bunch of things to improve mine safety, and one of those was to develop better refuge chambers, pods that miners could go into, be in an isolated atmosphere, would have food and water enough for 4 days. So that's some of this. This webpage came out of that. We also had to develop training to go along with it, because you need to be trained on expectations training when you're using a refuge chamber. But these topic pages are not really all the 100% solution for finding our content, because they only cover our major topics. The page itself only shows some of our most noteworthy publication and products on that topic, so it's not everything that we have. If you're looking for something that's not there, then it's going to be kind of tough to find. Also, my personal pet peeve is that some of our topics really overlap. I mean, people doing research in some of the same areas. How do you decide what goes on a web page? I'll show an example of that on the next screen. And some of our research is multidisciplinary, so where do you put it on every single topic page where it might apply? This is a picture of our organization chart. We have 6 different research branches shown down here. And you can see that our fires and explosions branch right here does ventilation research, because ventilation is one of the primary ways to mitigate methane in a coal mine. But our dust people over here also do ventilation research, because you have to ventilate where you're actually cutting the coal to keep the coal dust down to prevent people from breathing in too much dust. So 2 very different topics, but both covering ventilation. Then the best example of overlapping work is our human factors branch over here, shown in highlighted in red. They work across all different branches. They deal with the human-machine interface. They develop our training materials. They may be developing training materials for any one of these other research branches. So here's an example of a training product that they developed recently. It's a desktop virtual reality based training, teaching people how to use a mind map to find their way out of a mine. When you're working in a coal mine, you might be miles back in the mine. You need to know how to get out, especially if you find yourself in a mine disaster, walking out through smoke with goggles on and having pretty limited visibility. So this all led to an idea that I had back in around 2005 that, well, all these websites out there, shopping websites, are using faceted navigation to let people browse their content. Maybe we could do something like that for our website. The only problem is we didn't have a thesaurus, we didn't have anything to start with. So, but I had a lot of management support, fortunately, and they allowed me to start this project, which kind of started and stopped over the years, because as we sometimes I got pulled off to work on other things, and then finally I would get back to it again. But we eventually developed this, what we call our mining safety and health thesaurus, mostly covering subject terms. But we also developed a list of document types so that we could distinguish between our videos and our training materials and our software products and so forth. And the idea was that you could use this eventual tool that we would build on top of here, so that, just like we've seen in previous examples, you could pick a keyword, it would constrain the search, pick another keyword, the search would constrain further, and users could target the kind of content that they were looking for. So this is the site browser tool. It shows a search already in progress, and this is actually out on our website right now. Maybe it shouldn't be, because I think it's not quite ready for prime time. But on the left you see we have 14 different I call facets, the top-level terms in our thesaurus. People can click on any one of those. In the center, it would open up a list of all the keywords available in that tree. User clicks whatever keywords they want from that, clicks OK, and then the search produces the result set here. I'm searching, and up at the top of the screen, you can see that there are some breadcrumbs here showing what the user searched on. So this is the same kind of information as I showed you on that one topic page. We're looking at training materials related to refuge chambers, and there are 6 of them. I'll show you some other screenshots of this tool later on. But the idea of this is that we would, that users would be able to control the search, get as detailed as they wanted to. They would never experience a dead-end search because as they select a keyword, the list of remaining available keywords recomputes, might even eliminate a facet entirely if there are no keywords that are relevant. And so by anytime you click a keyword, you're guaranteed to get a successful result. And we also thought we could leverage this same tool to build canned searches on some of our pages, that we wouldn't have to keep going back and changing that page. We used, for example, we wanted to, our managers wanted us to list all of our capacity building contracts that we have. Capacity building meaning trying to increase skills in the mining industry. We were able to build that with one of these site browser searches and just make it a link on a web page, on a contracts web page. So we had 3 phases then, as I said earlier, to get to where we are first, and I'm going to talk about each of those. The development of the thesaurus, the development of our web content management system, and then finally the site browser. The thesaurus was, and I'm learning now from yesterday's talks that maybe we didn't have the best approach here. We started out with our content experts. And that's not always apparently the best way to go. But I'm glad that we did, because we were rapidly losing some of our content experts to retirement, so we were able to grab up some of their knowledge before they left. We actually started in a different software package back in 2005, and then I stopped working on the project, and by the time I came back to it, the company was defunct. We needed a replacement. I looked and researched tools, and we ended up choosing Data Harmony Thesaurus Master, thinking at that time we were only going to use the Thesaurus Master part. But that soon proved to be wrong, and ended up being a really great decision in the long run. But our thesaurus right now contains 14 facets or top-level terms, about 1,600 preferred terms, 1,000 non-preferred, so those still need to be built out. We have about 3,000 rules, of which 402 are conditional, and we had a contract with Access Innovation to develop our initial rule base, which was really helpful to us since we didn't know what we were doing. So here's a picture of the thesaurus. The center shows the 14 facets. I have 2 of them highlighted because I think these are the 2 most important. We mainly deal with different hazards and exposures that miners are exposed to, and then the methods that we have to mitigate those hazards and exposures. So I sort of expanded out those 2 facets on the left side and on the right side. So you can see, for example, over here, I can read this. The hazards and exposures facet, we have hazard of moving objects. In the mining industry, you have massive equipment in tight, constrained spaces, and you have workers in the area of poor visibility, darkness. People get hurt all the time. So one of the areas of research that you might have noticed on an earlier slide is our, we're doing proximity detection research to detect when somebody gets too close to a dangerous section of the machine to prevent that machine from moving when a person's there. So kind of these hazards and control methods kind of sometimes go hand in hand. Sometimes there are multiple control methods for a given hazard. But then we had to build a web content management system to store all of our website content. And we had, we built this as a custom intranet application using some standard web technologies. We wanted to build this software so that our researchers could maintain their own web pages. So that was kind of different than most web content management systems out there that require you to have some IT expertise. We also built in the ability to do some automated tagging using MAI's inline tagging web service. And everything is stored then in a SQL Server database. So we have all of the web page content is in the database, the tags, the keywords that have been selected are all stored in the SQL Server database. And that's basically a requirement of CDC. They won't let us develop any dynamic web applications unless we're only using a SQL Server database. We can't be using other tools. So here's an example of the home page, pretty straightforward. It's, you can have various views, but this is just showing all the pages on our site. You can see that there are pages in various states of approval, in draft mode, published mode, awaiting approval by a manager. You can see over here we have different page owners, and then if you have the proper rights, you can go in and edit a page or conduct other actions on a page, like changing the owner or changing who's the reviewer. Here's an example of a web page, and I'm going to just step you through how you would build such a page. So this is a page about how to insert earplugs on our website. We have, once you open up that page in our content management system, you'll see that it opens up to a page where there are 4 different tabs across the top. The first is descriptive data, and this is just basically metadata about the page, the title, how often it needs to be reviewed, usually annually, the language, some short description of the page. The last tab is where you actually build the content, and this is what we call a generic page. It's our most flexible page type, so you're basically just building whatever you want to. Some pages might have fields that you have to fill out that are required to help build the page. But of most interest to you is this tab right here where we add keywords to a web page, and you can pick your own keywords from the 14 facets on the left, which expand, open up, and you can click the keywords that you want, or you can go over here and click the Suggest Terms button, and it'll use the MAI indexing web service to go out and suggest up to 10 of the top suggested terms for that page. And you can see some of this works well, and some of it maybe not quite so much, and we need to expand our rules a little bit more. It found ears and earplugs, which is good. That was relevant to the page. But it also found fingers and hands, because the web page talked about using your fingers and hands to get the right fit with your earplug. Down here, some of this is kind of funny. We have some unusual jargon in the mining industry. So seals are actually walls that you build in a mine, and since that page was talking about getting a good seal on your earplug, it matched that. And ventilation curtains, a synonym for ventilation curtains is called checks. So since the web page was talking about checking, your earplug, it matched on that. So we need to obviously build out some better rules there to prevent that from happening. And then down here at the bottom, users can supply their own keywords if they can't find them, or just have new ones to suggest. And I will say, even though users, or general users, can go in and edit on this page, they usually don't. It's usually, we have 3 people doing most of the indexing. One's a librarian, and 2 of them are editors. So they're not indexers either. And then the last tab is this types of material, which lets you choose what type. Is it a publication? If so, what type of publication? A book chapter, a conference paper. It might be a training product, a video. It could be a page about a conference that we're offering. So these are our different material types. And lastly, there's a feature in there that lets us update the Thesaurus. By just clicking a button, we feed in an XML export file from Thesaurus Master. And it not only updates the display of the Thesaurus in here and out on our site browser tool, but it also tries to fix any previously indexed records that need to change based on the changes that have occurred to the Thesaurus since the last time. So if you delete a term, it's going to delete that tag from all of the pages that have been indexed with that tag. So phase 3 is our site browser. And I showed you a screenshot of this earlier. This is the entry screen showing all 14 facets, a little bit of instruction. The user then continues to add keywords to refine their search. This tool was built using some of the same technologies as our web content management system, except it's an internet application. And we don't use any Access Innovations tools at this point because it's strictly running off of the SQL Server database. So after we had this all built, we thought we'd do a usability test to see how well people could actually use this tool. And this is where things sort of fell apart. We took 5 subjects that were employees at our facility. We tried to get a cross-section of people that might represent some of our eventual website users, representing different stakeholder groups, like a guy that used to be a miner, a guy that used to be an industry executive. We collected both performance and preference data to see not only how well they could use the tool, but how much they liked it. There were 3 parts to the usability test. The first part was to complete 8 tasks with the browser that we asked them to complete. We recorded the screen activity as they worked. At the end of each task, we gave them a single ease use question, basically asking them how easy or difficult was this on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being most difficult. And we also had observers hand recording comments as we watched them perform these tasks. In the second part, we did what's called a cued retrospective think aloud exercise, which we basically played back the video of their 7th task, figuring by then they probably would have learned how to use the tool, and we asked them to talk and walk us through what they were thinking as they were doing the task. And then finally, we gave them a post-test questionnaire using the system usability scale developed by John Brook, which is a pretty standard usability, a quick and dirty usability test of 10 questions. I'll show you that on an upcoming slide. And then 1 more question, asking them what they would change about this site browser tool if they could. The results across our 5 subjects, the goal, of course, being 5 as perfect, was not very high. Our manager over here did pretty well. In fact, he didn't have too many problems running. He thought it was wonderful. He thought everybody would love this thing. But then you look at some of these other people, and they're engineers, and we had a staff person who was basically a secretary, and they really struggled to and this was the preference data, not even the performance data. So although they might have ranked some of their preference higher, on some of these they actually didn't get the right answer. So they thought they were doing well and they really weren't. So that was not encouraging. Our mean score across all of the tasks and across all of the test subjects was only a 3.1. And oh, by the way, the number of, in the parentheses over here show the number of keywords that they had to pick to complete the search. So we started out simple and went to more difficult. Number 2 had 0 because it was just basically, can you reset the search to start a new one? This is the system usability scale. So basically, it's just asking in a bunch of different ways. How easy was this to use? Did you find it too complex to use? Do you think you would use it in the future? The results for this, and these are percentiles, not percentages, so you don't interpret it as like a perfect score being 100. Research has shown that a 68 is about the score that it is about the average score for software, and our mean score was only 49. We had a couple people rank it higher than 68, but overall we were well under where we wanted to be. So we had asked them some questions like what you found to be most difficult or what was problematic about the tool. One of the things that we found was that people were confused by the top level terms, the facet names. They weren't sure which facet to go into to find a keyword they were looking for. In one case, we actually did have, we were calling, we had a facet called products and materials, and then we also had a facet called material types. So we renamed that material types to document types to make it different. But I think we still need to revisit some of those facet names and make them easier to understand, or possibly even reorganize the thesaurus itself. People had a hard time finding keywords. We had no search option on the page at that time. That's why we added that, we added a search option to let them search on the page, but I think maybe we need to go a step further and be able to search across the entire thesaurus, and to be able to search on synonyms, which that currently doesn't do. It only searches for the keyword itself. There was some confusion with button names on accepting the keyword, so we revisited that and just made it a simple OK cancel, hoping that would simplify things. We had, people did not notice the breadcrumbs at the top of the page. They were showing them the keywords that they had picked, and that they could click on those to eliminate them if they wanted to go backwards in their search. We actually had a person who didn't know how to open and close the hierarchies, the trees. You would think that anybody knows how to do that in this day and age. You have to do that every time you use Word, and you look for a file in the file browser, but no, we actually found people that couldn't do that. We had people who had difficulty selecting parents versus children versus both parents and children versus no parents and no children in a subtree. We did try to improve the way that behaved a little bit to make it more understandable. And we had one person who was confused about the effect of selecting multiple keywords from a tree. I thought it was fairly obvious. I go to a shopping website, I pick from the color facet blue and black, and I get anything that's blue or black, but no, they were interpreting it as it has to be blue and black. So, we were kind of surprised at that. So again, back to the site browser, this shows finally what it looks like when you select a facet, in this case products and materials, and then these trees from which you can select keywords. Up here we have this find term on page, which is something new that we've added. We added the ability to uncheck all because we had people manually unchecking. They'd select a whole big subtree and then they were trying to select or click each one to unselect them again. We also, now this is something that I'm not sure how to handle here, but we have, after each keyword, we list how many matches you would have if you picked that keyword, but sometimes we have a parent that actually has 0 matches in the database, but some of its children might have matches, so we're listing a 0, and we don't actually let them click on these, but a lot of people think that looks really strange to see a 0 there, so I'm not quite sure how to handle that, but you have to list the parent in order to list the children. So some of the future plans are to, as I said, improve that find term search box, to be able to search both preferred and non-preferred terms, to be able to search across all the different facets of the thesaurus. Maybe looking at simplifying or reorganizing the thesaurus entirely. I've seen other solutions out there where people ask the user to first type in a keyword and then you present the site browser to them. So maybe that would be a possible solution because by then your list of available keywords is greatly reduced and maybe less confusing. As I said previously, we need to improve our non-preferred terms because we only have 1,000 right now, and our rules. We have to finish indexing our content because although this is out there right now, we have slightly less than 50% of our content indexed, and I'm finding that it's not even being indexed very accurately because the people that we have indexing are not true indexers. So we're going to start monthly meetings when I get back to try to get everybody on the same page. We especially have problems with things like home pages and other types of catalog pages. People are indexing at too detailed of a level, and just because we have a page about some type of dust control or a link to some dust control publication on our homepage does not mean you would index that homepage as at that detailed of a level. We also want to add scope notes and definitions to our thesaurus so that we could eventually have some hover help to explain to people what the terms mean, both the indexers and the users on our website. We want to be able to take advantage of, I initially wanted to take advantage of related terms, so if a person's doing a search, you can use our related terms to suggest other possible searches you might be interested in, but we're afraid to add that level of complexity at this point because the basics are seeming to be too difficult to use. And then to continue to monitor the usage of our website